All right, guys. So we're starting off 2026 pretty strong. My president, Donald J. Trump, has just captured Nicolas Maduro, president of Venezuela, narco dictator president, illegitimate election. Okay, the other party obviously won, and he just decided that no votes, the votes didn't count. He won, and that it's it, right? It's about time somebody does something in Venezuela. Now I know a lot of you people and even me sometimes go like, yeah, it's their country. They're supposed to take care of themselves. Why did they vote for that guy? And I completely agree with that. But at the same time, like, who is supposed to help? Because at the same time, there's a lot of Venezuelans that have migrated into the U.S. just fleeing hunger, fleeing starvation, fleeing death by political persecution. And somebody has to do something, right? And the U.S., being the most powerful country in the world, is the only one that can really do something about it because of what we stand for, right? We stand for freedom. We stand for liberty. We stand for human rights, just basic human rights. And President Donald Trump is gonna speak now in a couple minutes on Mar-a-Lago on this capture. This is live on NBC News. We're going to be reacting to it live, guys. Let's see what the news got to say. Meanwhile, we wait for it.
President Maduro saying that he essentially facilitated diplomatic passports to drug traffickers to make it easier for them essentially to get across borders.
So that's another thing, right? Venezuela was easing the drugs to come into this country, right? So there's gotta be a way to stop that. The fentanyl, all the drugs coming into this country, Venezuela was a stop, and then delivering those by boat over here, right? There had to be a stop to that as well. So
for a case like this in the United States over a citizen, obviously, of another sovereign country. Here, the way they appear to be doing it, Peter, is by saying that Maduro will be first brought and arrested in the Southern District of New York. And so that's the way that essentially federal prosecutors here in New York are reaching out to.
And guys, the reason I'm speaking out on this is because I'm a Cuban American, right? So I'm a Cuban American. I came here when with my parents when I was 11 years old. My parents came over here on a visa lottery, and they were basically fleeing Cuba because my dad couldn't get food for me. My mom was struggling for basic stuff, water, light, basic food. You can't just go to a market like over here and just buy stuff, okay? And it's not because of the U.S. blockade. No, the blockade is inside, okay? Cuba and Venezuela. Cuba has been under dictatorship for the longest. It's more than 65 years. Venezuela, since Hugo Chavez came in, he was basically saying, yeah, there's gonna be elections. I'm not gonna be a communist, this and that. And he did the complete opposite, guys. Okay, socialism never works. Socialism sucks. Socialism sounds good on paper. On theory, it does not work. It will never work. Okay, it will never work.
Again, your reference to the former Panamanian president, Manuel Noriega. Notably, he surrendered on this day 36 years ago. Gives us a bit of a template as we try to get a better understanding of the circumstances happening here. You were talking, Laura, about Pam Bondi, the attorney general, who posted earlier that soon, she said he will soon, about Nicolas Maduro, face the full wrath of American justice. I recognize that it's a bit premature.
All of them should go to jail permanently. Okay, at least go to jail permanently because of what they did. They caused a lot of death. Okay, they caused starvation. Kids were dying of hunger. They deserve all justice. Okay, they deserve to go to jail permanently for the rest of their lives. Take away all their money, because the public is the people suffered due to this guy who was just elected by just Hugo Chavez being like, yeah, he's gonna be your next president. There was no legitimate election. There was no voting. He came in. He doesn't even know how to speak.
Where does he stand?
He was
be watching
putting
that.
people
You can
in
see
jail
the
for
video at the end of
expressing
this
their
day, Nicolas
opinions.
Maduro, who woke up,
Venezuelans were starving like never before.
at
There
the
was no
face of the
oil.
barrel
Venezuela
of
is
US
rich
forces
in
this
oil.
morning in
Venezuela had
Caracas,
no
Venezuela,
oil for the
ends
public.
his night in
So,
New York City,
guys,
as he
this
prepares
is
to face
the
charges,
best thing that
here
could
as
happen
that
this
indictment
year.
has now been shared publicly.
Venezuela is
Laura
step
Jarrett,
number
our
one. I
senior
hope
legal
you really
correspondent.
Cuba
Laura,
is step number
thank you. I
two.
want to bring in now our White
Cuban
House
people have
correspondent,
really
Monica
been
Alba, who's there in
suffered,
Washington,
been
D.C.
suffering
Monica, you and I have been
way
speaking,
too much.
back and forth over the course of this morning. Let's just take a moment at 11
Yeah,
o'clock and
so
sort of reset the
let's
scene
see
here
what
about these dramatic
President
developments
Trump has to
that
say.
we've
It's
been
already
witnessing.
11
The president
a.m.
at roughly 4:20 this morning making the
Let's see if it
announcement.
starts on
America
time.
is
Maybe it
waking
starts
up
a
to
couple
the
minutes
news that
after.
The U.S. was conducting strikes on the ground in and around Caracas, Venezuela, that country's capital city. And not only that, but that the U.S., as the president said, had captured and flown out of the country both Nicolas Maduro and his wife, an operation that he said was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement. The operation, he said he would detail further at 11 o'clock. It is now 11 o'clock on the East Coast. We have a team on the ground at Mar-a-Lago. As soon as the president begins his remarks, we will take you there. But Monica, as we've discussed, this really marks a stunning and dramatic culmination of months that have built to this moment. The president's desire to oust Nicolas Maduro, to end drug trafficking from that country to the United States, and ultimately it ended on the pre-dawn hours in the early days of this year with U.S. forces raiding one of the properties where Maduro had been hiding and
Now, guys, at the same time, let's be completely honest here. It's also due to the oil, right? Venezuela is rich in oil. The U.S. needs oil because of AI and everything that's going on. So let's be also realistic, right? It's the midterms, right? So 2026 is midterms.
For a very long time, it was unclear exactly in what form that would take.
Also, we
Then
need
there were a
oil
couple of
for
days
all
where there
the
were
technological
questions
advancements
about when that
that
would
we need.
happen,
So,
certainly with
of
the
course, that
president
plays a lot of
himself
that
announcing
into it,
just
right?
in recent days
Maybe
that there
drugs
had
is
been
just
an
an
apparent
excuse to
strike
take him
on a
out.
drug facility on the
But
shore of
guys, this
Venezuela, not
benefits
necessarily
this
in
benefits the
heart of city
Venezuelan
or in
people.
Caracas, like
This
what
benefits
we saw
us. I mean, the
overnight.
oil that they were
raised a
using,
ton of
that was not
questions
going
about
to
what
the
could come
public
next,
either
whether
way.
that was an isolated
Okay.
incident where there were going to be more similar strikes on land.
So
And we
let's
know,
see
according to the
what's going on here.
himself, who spoke earlier today, that he planned, he said, to potentially carry this out 4 days ago, but the weather was, quote, not perfect. He said essentially that he was going to be monitoring this, but that they needed to have the right window. They needed to have a few more clouds, quote, than we thought. But then once they got the ultimate signal and they waited and they were able to do it, he said all of a sudden it opened up and we said go. Now, the president has been monitoring all of this from his Mar-a-Lago club down in Florida, where we know top administration officials have been coming and going over the last couple of weeks, where he has been holding some high-level meetings, certainly with world leaders, but also continuing to approve and order, as we have seen the Department of Defense announce, the continued strikes on these alleged drug boats. We saw that as recently as leading into New Year's Eve on December 30th and 31st. There were several strikes. It wasn't clear whether they were in the Eastern Pacific or whether they were in the Caribbean, as we have sometimes seen them give that exact detail. But they did release some video, and there was a question of some potential survivors that had come from one of those vessels that the Coast Guard had gone out to potentially attempt a search and rescue on, but ultimately abandoned that. So we know this week, certainly, there have been those incremental developments when it comes to this ultimate decision that the president took overnight. But I think it's really important to point out, Peter, some insight that we got from the White House Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, in that Vanity Fair interview, which was published just in mid-December, where she said that the ultimate goal here of the president was to continue bombing and hitting these alleged drug boats until, quote, Maduro cries uncle. That was her phrasing. And we saw the president, again, speak to this openly, speak to this publicly. But for months, the posture of the Trump administration and the White House was that this was not about regime change per se, was that this was about this so-called war on drugs.
One thing that we can say, guys, is Trump is the president of we need to take action, right? It's not The bureaucracy is not the, oh, this has to be approved, this and that. Guys, we need to take action on something. We take action on something, right? Again, do I agree with everything that he's doing when it comes to immigration? No. Is he a better choice than Kamala? 110,000%. Okay. Just because he's the president doesn't mean I have to agree with him on everything. Doesn't mean I have to like the guy. The guy just has to put America first. The guy has to make this country great. And if it helps Venezuelans, if it helps Cubans, then so be it. You know.
And ultimately, he said,
so far so good.
We can't do it. What he did.
Let's see what happens.
So I think, Peter, you have set the table perfectly in referencing, and some of our other colleagues have, the president's comments as candidate Donald Trump. It will be fascinating to see how they stack up against what he says today about these foreign involvements, further foreign entanglements, in a moment where his own supporters, and some of them who have been most outspoken and certainly broken with him in recent weeks and months, have argued that the president should stick to his more America first policy instead of getting involved overseas in these continued conflicts.
Now, I also agree with that. Don't get me wrong. Because he is saying, yeah, America first, and now we're attacking Venezuela. So there's a balance, right? There's a balance. I'm super happy because the Venezuelan people now have a chance to actually live a normal life in Venezuela instead of having to migrate everywhere, every country, even here, right? I want the same thing for Cuba. I want my Cuban people to have a good life in the country that they were born in, so that they don't have to migrate somewhere else. Do you want to migrate? Everybody wants to migrate to the U.S., right? But being forced to migrate is a different story. One thing is, I want to migrate so I can have a better life than what I already have. Another thing is, I have to migrate because there's nothing that works here. There's two different things, right? One thing is, there's absolutely no future for my kids here. I cannot have a baby in these conditions. My baby is going to die, or I'm going to die, my family is going to die. So I have to migrate out because of the conditions. Okay? So there's a difference, guys. Everybody, the U.S. is the #1 country in the world when it comes to technology, when it comes to quality of life. Nobody can debate me on that. When it comes to quality of life, yes, do you have to work? Of course you have to work. But when it comes to quality of life, having central AC in your house, having fast internet, just having phones, all this stuff, everything being affordable in a way of like, I can get a loan, stuff like that. Yes, obviously people are still struggling because inflation is just ruining everything, right? However, you still have a chance. If you come here, you start with $0 to become somebody the fastest, okay? The fastest. Can you go to another country and still go up the ladder? Of course. But in this country, it is easier than we think, okay? It is easier than people actually put it out to be, okay? And you don't need $1 million a year to live comfortable. Even in Miami, with $200,000 a year at most, dude, at most, you can live well, okay? At most. Even with $100,000 a year, you can still live comfortable, okay? And that's being $50,000 per person a year, okay? Is it hard to accomplish? Yes, but you can work your way through it. Don't spend the money on things that you don't need, on things that you don't need just to impress other people. Live humbly, save money, invest, and you will climb up the ladders, right? But nobody wants to put in the work, okay? So let's see what's going on here now.
Operation after it had already begun. Where does this go more broadly, Peter? Colombia could be next, the president had previously warned. You heard him this morning talk about Mexico and obviously the U.S. fight against drug trafficking and cartels there. Are those ominous indications that perhaps U.S. intervention in those countries is next? Is the president merely, so to speak, riffing, answering questions on that front? And then, of course, his response to some of the pushback that we've already seen from some of the critics of this action from the president, not just on the left, the Democratic left here, but including from some in his own party, Peter. And I'll send it back to you with that as we keep an eye here on the president's news conference set to begin, we think, shortly.
Hallie Jackson, our senior Washington correspondent. We're going to take a quick pause right now. My colleague Tom Yamas is going to pick up our coverage on the other side. An NBC News special report begins right now.
All right, so I guess they're going to take a break. Or is this it?
This is an NBC News
Is this it?
special report. Here's Tom Yamas.
And good morning. We are coming on the air right now with breaking news. President Trump is set to speak at any moment now about today's large-scale U.S. strike against Venezuela. It's been about 9 hours since multiple explosions rattled Venezuela's capital of Caracas. Since then, President Trump said the U.S. captured that country's leader, Nicolas Maduro, along with his wife, with both of them flown out of the country. And the Trump administration officials saying they will face criminal charges here in the U.S. It comes after months of pressure on Venezuela, including a huge military presence
you are a
that's been
narco
building in the
trafficker.
Caribbean. The
You are the
interception of
reason
Venezuelan
drugs
oil
are coming
tankers,
into this
remember,
country,
and strikes multiple
and you
of them that
deserve
killed dozens of
justice.
people
That's
are
it,
both
simple.
accused of drug running. The president also saying today that in the final days before this strike, Maduro wanted to negotiate, but he, President Trump, was done negotiating. At any moment at Mar-a-Lago, we're expecting the president to walk out and to take the podium. We will carry those remarks live. For now, as we wait, I want to go to our senior national security correspondent, Courtney Cuby, to walk us through the attack and the eventual capture of Nicolas Maduro. Courtney, this attack happened under the darkness of night. We understand this was supposed to take place a few days beforehand, but because of the weather, they decided to delay it day by day, and then they decided to strike early this morning.
So it was supposed to take place before, man. So imagine just ending 2025 with Maduro being captured. Oh, man, what a year end. That would be crazy.
Operators like this don't want. They want as much darkness as possible. That does not include a full moon. But you're right. Officials telling us that, in fact, the president actually authorized this action days ago, more than a week ago, and that has now been essentially an hour-by-hour wait to see when the final go-ahead would happen. We now know, as you mentioned, that it started overnight last night, now about 9 hours ago, these first explosions. We don't have a whole lot of detail about exactly what the U.S. military component was here. The president, in first announcing this on Truth Social, called these U.S. strikes, not airstrikes. A couple of the assets that we know the U.S. has in the region include U.S. Navy ships that have the ability to fire Tomahawks or T-LAMs. Those are missiles that can fire and strike in a very precise location and give the military standoff capability. Essentially, that means that they can fire them from far enough back that those that are doing the firing, the ship itself, is not necessarily in danger should wherever they're trying to strike, try to counter-strike against them. But the social media videos that we have been seeing do appear to show U.S. military helicopters. It looks like U.S. Chinooks. Those are generally people movers. It wouldn't surprise me, Tom, if we learned that President Maduro and his wife were put on those, or some of the U.S. officials who went in for that ground operation went in on those Chinooks. We also know that the 160.
So what happened to the Venezuelan soldiers that were practicing and doing drills when the Americans would come in? What happened, bro? Like, what happened, bro? Madurito, what happened, Madurito? Huh? What happened to all those drills and exercises? Oh, when the Americans come in, we're gonna be ready. The imperialists, capitalists. What happened, Madurito, huh?
And then we are also
Crazy.
seeing indications that there may have been U.S. Ospreys up. It wouldn't surprise me again if those were also used to carry Nicolas Maduro and his wife out of the country and potentially to bring U.S. troops in. But one of the biggest questions that we have, we're hoping we get some fidelity from President Trump and others at this news conference in only moments, is exactly what authorities were used here. So in other words, who was the lead on this operation? If in fact the justification, the legal justification, was to go in and take out Nicolas Maduro because of the indictment against him for narco trafficking and other alleged offenses, then was the U.S. military used for that? And if so, under what authorities? Again, Tom, the other thing that is we're really hoping we get some answers on is the U.S. military in this took strikes on a sovereign nation's military. These were Venezuelan military locations that were targeted in some of the video that you see here. What were the authorities under which the U.S. took those strikes? Senator Mike Lee tweeting that Marco Rubio explained to him that the justification for that was to protect the U.S. officials who were going in on the ground, to make sure, essentially like a shaping operation, make sure that they made it as safe as possible for those U.S. officials to go in and take Maduro out. But what was the actual legal authority of those? Those are the kinds of questions that we hope to get to President Trump and officials this morning, Tom.
And then, Courtney, as we get those granular details and as they come in, we may or may not know them. We have to also talk about sort of the intelligence of all of this, right? Because within hours of striking Venezuela, they had the leader of that country and his wife in custody being brought to the USS Iwo Jima, which was there in the waters off of Venezuela. That's incredibly fast. Usually, sometimes in these situations, these heads of state, they have safe houses that they run to, that they hide to. This all happened very fast.
Yeah, it really opens up the question about how.
Bro, because Maduro is dumb, bro. He's dumb. Like, he just thinks he's immortal. He just thinks he's invisible. Nobody's gonna catch him. Wherever he is, he can be at his house, whatever. Like, bro, come on, dude. Come on, dude. How ignorant can you be? Come on.
And what was it U.S. intelligence? Was it U.S. military intelligence? Was it a combination? How did this all come together?
All right, Courtney, stand by for us. I do want to go back to Peter Alexander, because the big question now, and there are many of them, but the big question right now is who is in charge of Venezuela, right? The Trump administration has been accusing Venezuela of being a narco state, of Maduro being a puppet for the cartels, essentially being a meeting point for the cartels to ship out cocaine around the world and to the United States.
The president of Mexico is also, well, that's the biggest puppet of the cartel, because the Mexico is ruled by the cartels.
But Peter, right now it's unclear. And the president has come out today saying that he hopes whoever takes over Venezuela, whoever's in charge, goes in a different direction than Maduro.
Tom, I should tell you, as you're speaking to me, I'm hearing from our colleagues on the ground at Mar-a-Lago that we now have a 2-minute warning, which means we'll hear from the president now in just a matter of moments. So I'll keep this very brief for you, but I would say that is...
All right, guys, in 2 minutes, the president will be speaking. So let's see what he says.
Clearly, to be able to capture Nicolas Maduro and his wife, what other plans were already in place? Who is governing that country? Is it Maria Corina Machado? She was the former or the longtime opposition leader there. Her name may be familiar because she recently won the Nobel Peace Prize and had a remarkable departure from that country where she accepted the award overseas in public. Separately, a lot of real questions about what takes place now going forward, what the U.S. has done to try to better secure the situation on the ground there to ensure that there is some form of a peaceful transition. Venezuelans are still waking up to this dramatic news. And then finally, and separate from this, I think there are going to be a lot of broad questions about the TikTok, exactly how all this came to be this morning, and about the president's sort of policies around the world right now. The president who came to power with a desire, he said, to end wars has now initiated strikes in many countries: Iran, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Nigeria, Somalia, now Venezuela as well, in addition to the Pacific and the Caribbean. All the questions top of mind for me as I await the president's remarks moments from now.
All right, Peter, you stand by for us as well. I can tell you we are coming to you live tonight, or I should say today, from Miami, where the streets, especially in Doral, where our studios are, people have been celebrating there in the streets here in Doral, Venezuelan Americans and then Cuban Americans and Nicaraguan Americans as well, hoping that this could somehow lead to a domino effect in the Caribbean, in Latin America, where leftist dictators are taken out.
I agree. It is 2025, and it's about time. This system, communism, socialism, this system just doesn't work. We just stop and take all those dictators out. That's it. Guys, it is 2025. Open your eyes. There's information out there. The internet exists. History exists. If you don't know history, you're going to tend to repeat it. Know your history, know what's going on, and stop voting for these people that seems nice. It's not about being nice. It's about the system that they want to bring to the country. It just doesn't work. You are not free. You will go to jail for expressing yourself. You will die of starvation. Okay, like it just doesn't work. Socialism doesn't work. The government doesn't produce. It's the private companies. It's the public that produces. The government doesn't produce crap. And Doral is pretty close to where I live, guys. I'm also from Miami, and it is amazing just seeing people celebrate how their country can just be free again, and hopefully they learn the lesson. That's the thing. Learn the lesson. Don't vote for these people again. Okay? The one that started all this was obviously Chavez. Once you vote, you can vote them in, but you can't vote them out. I will repeat that. You can vote them in, but you cannot vote them out. They will not leave unless it is by force, and the force is going to be either from the people or from the U.S. They're not going to leave unless the public really protests. And I know the Venezuelans have protested and a lot of people have died, but the only way to take them out is by force. And if the public is unarmed, you cannot take him out. You cannot push him out, right? So the first thing that they do, obviously, is take away your rights to bear arms, which in the U.S. this cannot happen, okay? Because once they take your rights away to bear arms, you are defenseless. You will not have arms, but they will, okay? The government will, the authorities will. And what are you going to do? Throw rocks? Get a knife? You can't bring a knife to a gunfight. So once they take away your rights to bear arms, it is done. Okay? It is done. At any moment, President Trump now is going to speak. So I will stop talking, and then we will listen to what he's got to say, and then we'll react to it. But yeah, guys. So socialism, communism, democratic socialism, anything that has the word socialism in it does not work. Is capitalism perfect? No. No system is perfect, but it is the best one. It is the only system that has enriched the most amount of people ever in the history of ever. Okay? Your freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press. That's why this country is the greatest country, because of the Constitution. Presidents cannot violate the Constitution. Trump has not violated the Constitution, okay? Because we're still free to talk crap that we want to talk about him. We can talk about it, okay? We can talk in favor, we can talk against. Nothing will happen to you. You can protest. Nothing will happen to you, okay? Once you start going to jail for expressing your opinion on a political matter, that's when you have an authoritarian government, okay? Once you start getting banned, once you start having consequences just for speaking your opinion, you have an authoritarian government, okay? And that happened with our last president. A lot of people got banned. Okay, let's just say that. Okay, a lot of people got banned from social platforms for speaking the truth. So I haven't seen that with Trump. So say what you want about the guy, but he's not banning anybody that talks crap about him. So he defends himself, of course, like any president should, right?
Was all about. He campaigned on getting Americans out of foreign wars. That was part of the inaugural address that he delivered when he said that that would be a part of his vision. And so part of why you're seeing these cracks begin to form within the MAGA base is for that very reason. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of those with the loudest voices, saying that her constituents care about the economy, issues like health care, and that this runs counter to those critical promises that were made. So I think questions moving forward: will Congress be briefed? When will there need to be congressional approval for any future action? And what, if any, reaction will we get from the rest of the MAGA base, Tom?
Yeah, excuse me, Kristen, we're about to go to Keir Simmons, but Kristen, I had an opportunity to speak with Maduro years ago. I interviewed him inside of Venezuela, and his belief was that President Trump never wanted him out. It was others around President Trump, people at the time like Senator Rubio, now the Secretary of State, who were the ones sort of whispering in President Trump's ear to get Maduro out. And now this has become a reality, and we know that Senator Rubio is now Secretary of State Rubio, who's been in charge with multiple jobs, including intelligence as well. Talk to me about that relationship and the role that the Secretary of State played in all of this.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head.
Now, I had a different opinion on Marco. I think he was playing politics back then when the Cuban people were telling him, hey, listen, this is what's going on in Cuba. The action needs to be taken right now. Now, he was a senator. It's not the same thing, right? You can only go so far as being a senator. However, I still disagree with him on a lot of things. I didn't like the guy too much. But now that he's the head of state, Secretary of State, right, there's a difference. You can make some decisions. And hopefully he's making the right decisions. He's a Cuban American as well. So he knows the struggle of Venezuelans. He knows the struggle of the Cubans as well. Let's see what he does after this.
Bring you those comments live as they happen. We also want to let you know that President Trump has released what we understand is video of Maduro in custody and also some video of the attack. We're going to have those momentarily. As I mentioned earlier, Keir Simmons is part of this coverage as well. Keir, I want to go to you. At the time that the United States has just taken out the leader of Venezuela, they've been trying to negotiate peace between Russia and Ukraine. This incredibly complicates both those negotiations and also it leaves sort of, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a vacuum, but there are questions about who's in charge in Venezuela right now and what role does the U.S. play in that?
Yeah, it's hard to find words, isn't it, Tom? And it's not surprising because we haven't seen an intervention, a U.S. intervention in Latin America like this since the 1980s. We do know, though, of course, Tom, from more recent history that regime change is unpredictable. Once you remove a leader in a country, what happens next, that is in question. And members of Maduro's regime are saying that there is stability and that this didn't work effectively. So there are huge questions. And around the world, America's adversaries and allies will be watching and waiting to see what plays out now. There has been some criticism significantly from the French foreign minister saying this kind of intervention is effectively, he says, it is wrong. And I think that's striking in terms of the breaks in international diplomacy that we have seen in 2025. But if leaders around the world, Tom, didn't get the message in 2025, they're getting it now at the beginning of 2026. The Trump administration messaging quite clearly, you must bend to our will. And as you say, questions from many, many countries, not least Russia. President Putin was very close to Maduro. They are allies. What does this mean for Russia? Is this a weakening of Russia? Is this effectively, a strike by the Trump administration against Russia as well as against Venezuela, against Russian interests? Certainly in the U.S.
Yeah, that's another thing. Cuba is also in the interest of Russia as well. I think Russia has a base in Cuba or something like that. So, you mess with them, you mess with the Russians, but, let's see what happens.
Assertion
that could bring down the narrative of that, Putin is Trump's friend. He's his buddy and whatever. If that happens, then he's like, hey, we're not buddies, we're just here to make things right?
We saw Chinese officials with Maduro just in the past few days. What message does this send? Because the Chinese were trying to say, this is our friend, don't usurp him. Well, that didn't work.
Keir, I do want to talk to you because you've done a lot of reporting about China's encroachment in this region as well. We can't talk about Venezuela and what's just happened and not talk about the oil reserves there. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world, in many ways feeding the countries that are not friends to the United States. The president has spoken about the oil that was taken, he says, by Venezuela that was U.S.'s oil from U.S. companies. This is going to complicate matters because it's unclear what happens with the oil production in Venezuela going forward.
Yeah, no question. And the Russians are playing a role in the Venezuelan oil industry as well. We should say, Tom, you can't just switch on the taps in Venezuela with that oil industry. It does have massive reserves, but it doesn't. It's not an industry that just can start working.
So that's the crazy part, guys, right? So they have massive oil reserves, but yet the public didn't have oil to fill up the cars. How do you explain that? What is that, a blockade? Well, like, how do you have massive reserves, but yet your people don't have gas to put in their cars? How do you explain that, right? So communists will say, oh, the blockade, oh no, relationships with the U.S., blah blah blah. It's the blockade is inside of your own country, guys. It's inside of Venezuela, it's inside of Cuba, it's inside of Nicaragua. The top, basically the trio of Latin communism is Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua.
To countries around the world, we don't like you intervening in our, in inverted commas, in our region. I mean, this is stunning. In some ways, though, it is not surprising, Tom. It does play into U.S. foreign policy in the region over decades and even over centuries. And I think from that history, what we do know, of course, is that you don't know what happens next, and that's what we have to watch for.
Again, we're awaiting the president at any moment. He was supposed to come out at 11 a.m., but again, this is a time when things are very fluid. We are going to bring you his comments as soon as he comes on. Kira, I do want to get back to you. Venezuela now a region in conflict, right? You have a country that has no leader. It's unclear who is in charge right now, if it's the vice president. You have an opposition leader who just won the Nobel Peace Prize, who is being celebrated across the world. Before that, you had another opposition leader, Juan Guaido, that was acknowledged by the United States going back 4 years as the true leader of Venezuela. And then you have the Venezuelan military, right, who is really holding the cards right now. But besides that, you have what is known as a colectivo, essentially neighborhood gangs that Maduro has armed so they stay loyal to him. Essentially, in Venezuela, where there's no work, there is no money, there is no food, he has given these people food, he has given them weapons so they stay loyal to him. So you have the military and you have sort of these neighborhood ragtag gangs.
That is crazy. You guys just heard that, right? He bribes other people so they can just stay true, stay loyal to him. That's crazy.
Venezuela, it's just not there that they have neighborhood watchmen, if you will, armed with machine guns.
Hey, I like that guy. I like this guy.
But it all speaks to who's going to be in charge and who's going to take over. And it sounds like President Trump, at least from now, is not pushing for a regime change. Even though he's taken out the leader of the country, he's saying whoever comes next, he hopes is not like Maduro, but he's assuming the vice president is in charge.
Yeah, and President Trump, and I'm sure we will hear it when we hear from President Trump in a moment. President Trump was asked earlier in an interview who will lead Venezuela, and he said, well, we're going to have to look at that right now. That kind of comment will prompt criticism from some that there needs to be a strategy here rather than simply just the tactic of removing Maduro. We have seen pictures, Tom, of civilians on the streets in Venezuela in support of Maduro. And you're right. If you are Venezuelan sitting at home right now, cowering perhaps a little bit, wondering what happens next, and you are against the Maduro regime, you are trying to calculate whether if you walk out onto the streets, you will become a victim. Will you be supported by the U.S.? Will those forces that Maduro built up around him that you so eloquently describe, will they target you? These kinds of things we know because we've seen this kind of thing before. And you have to be careful with comparisons. But if you take, for example, the U.S. experience in Iraq, where, of course, Saddam Hussein was removed, so that was regime change. What the U.S. then faced was a challenge about who should run the country, how the country should be run, and a civil war. Now, again, you do have to be careful with these comparisons, completely different part of the world, but the principles are familiar. And the question of whether you can change a country, make it more stable, maybe even make it democratic, with kinetic power that doesn't involve boots on the ground is a looming question here. And of course, the US has tried boots on the ground before, and that in the past, in some parts of the world, hasn't worked.
Keir, stand by for us because we now are seeing these images that are stunning that President Trump has posted on social media. This is the former leader of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro.
There he is, buddy. You scared, buddy?
You can see those blacked out sunglasses over his eyes. He is wearing the earmuffs as well. He looks to be in a tracksuit, likely the same outfit they took him in custody, and we don't know that for sure, but it looks like he's been scuffed up there. You can see his hands there given a bottle of water. This is the first image we've seen of the former leader of Venezuela, now in U.S. custody aboard what we believe is the USS Iwo Jima. Again, the president putting out this photo. He will stand trial, it appears, in New York. He was indicted in both the Southern District of Florida and in New York for charges stemming of drug trafficking, being a narco-terrorist, colluding with the cartels, allowing his country to be a meeting point, to be in a shipping point for they said millions of tons, I don't know if that exact figure is correct, of cocaine coming out of Venezuela to the United States and around the world.
Of course, he was a meeting point.
Taken into custody.
He was a meeting point.
If you're wondering why his wife was also taken into custody, she has held many roles in Venezuela in the political hierarchy, once as Attorney General, once as the leader of parliament. Some have said she's as popular as her husband, Nicolas Maduro. So both of them have been taken into custody. Of course, Maduro rising to power after Hugo Chavez was dying of cancer. He was in his third term, 2 of his elections deemed completely illegal by the international community. Even his last election, more Venezuelans voting for the opposition party, and yet he stayed in power as a true dictator in Latin America, building ties with places like Cuba, building ties with Russia and Iran and China, maintaining those relationships throughout. And he simply ran out of time in President Trump's side. We will hear from the president in a matter of moments. Our Richard Engel, our chief foreign correspondent, has been reporting from Latin America, from Colombia, when these strikes started. Richard, you've been watching all this information. You saw that image just posted of Nicolas Maduro. Not exactly the same story, not exactly the same case, but reminiscent of when they took out Saddam Hussein, a similar image. You know, these images are very important to President Trump as well. Again, 2 completely different situations, 2 different military actions, but the visuals are very similar here.
I think they're very similar, and I think it's no surprise. President Trump is a little bit late in coming out to make his remarks. I think it's no accident that that image was released first. This is the image that President Trump wanted to show Venezuelans, wanted to show Americans, wanted to show the world. A dictator who stood up, who refused to accept President Trump's policies, who said no, and who's now in handcuffs with earmuffs on so that he won't know what is being said around him, won't know where he is. A man who went from a palace to now going to a courtroom and potentially a jail cell. A very powerful image, an image that will be seen in Venezuela by the people, but also by the leadership. I've been speaking to people today who've been involved in this negotiation process that has been both diplomatic and a negotiation process by force over the last several months to try to get Maduro to leave on his own. And what we've seen and have been talking about all day is this escalation. First, there were the attacks on boats. Then there was this seizures of the oil tankers. Then a land attack. Then ultimately a snatch and grab operation to take Nicolas Maduro. You were talking about the leadership. Right now, there clearly is a power vacuum. I was speaking with a senior official who is also involved in this negotiation process, this pressure campaign, who said the most important person in Venezuela right now is the defense minister Padrino, that he effectively is managing the country as it goes through this transition. We don't know yet if this was a successful regime change that will lead to a democratic future and a better future that could see the opposition leader, who was just awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, take power and a smooth transition, or if this regime change will lead to state collapse and civil war. It was a bold move. It was a successful military operation.
Man, that is not going to lead to a civil war. Not in Venezuela. I'll say 95% of Venezuelans want him gone anyways. Like, what? 5% is going to fight against the 95? No matter how many weapons you have? Like, come on. Okay? Let's be real here. Most likely it's not going to happen. Oh, man, that picture is so good. Madurito.
You should make peace with the political party, or you could be the next to get snatched and sent to an American warship and ultimately, most likely, an American prison.
And Richard, it's fair to say from your reporting in the region, you were in Colombia, the president's actions even today have left allies, have left enemies guessing, even confused. I remember speaking to the Colombian president. He came out on social media and said one thing about President Trump, and then you spoke to a defense minister, and they said something completely different.
This President Trump wants the region to be afraid of him. And many White House officials talk about President Trump's unpredictability, and that fear is founded.
Oh, here he is, guys.
Richard,
here he is.
Interrupt you. President Trump is taking the podium. Let's listen in.
Let's go.
Appreciate
Here he goes.
you being here. Late last night and early today, at my direction, the United States Armed Forces conducted an extraordinary military operation in the capital of Venezuela. Overwhelming American military power, air, land, and sea, was used to launch a spectacular assault. And it was an assault like people have not seen since World War II. It was a force against a heavily fortified military fortress in the heart of Caracas to bring outlaw dictator Nicolas Maduro to justice. This was one of the most stunning, effective, and powerful displays of American military might and competence in American history. And if you think about it, we've done some other good ones, like the attack on Soleimani, the attack on al-Baghdadi, and the obliteration and decimation of the Iran nuclear sites just recently in an operation known as Midnight Hammer, all perfectly executed and done. No nation in the world could achieve what America achieved yesterday, or frankly in just a short period of time. All Venezuelan military capacities were rendered powerless as the men and women of our military, working with U.S. law enforcement, successfully captured Maduro in the dead of night. It was dark. The lights of Caracas were largely turned off due to a certain expertise that we have. It was dark, and it was deadly. But captured along with his wife.
Is he saying that they caused the blackout?
Celia Flores, both of whom now face American justice. Maduro and Flores have been indicted in the Southern District of New York. It's Jay Clayton, for their campaign of deadly narco-terrorism against the United States and its citizens. I want to thank the men and women of our military who achieved such an extraordinary success overnight with breathtaking speed, power, precision, and competence. You rarely see anything like it. You've seen some raids in this country that didn't go so well. They were an embarrassment. If you look back to Afghanistan, or if you look back to the Jimmy Carter days, they were different days. We're a respected country again, like never before. These highly trained warriors, operating in collaboration with U.S. law enforcement, caught them in a very ready position. They were waiting for us. They knew we had many ships out in the sea. We're just sort of waiting. They knew we were coming. So they were in a ready, what's called a ready position. But they were completely overwhelmed and very quickly incapacitated.
Bro, of course.
If you would have
There's
seen
no chance the Venezuelan army can just...
impressed. I'm not sure that you'll ever get to see it, but it was an
Yeah.
incredible thing to see. Not a single American service member was killed, and not a single piece of American equipment was lost. We had many helicopters, many planes, many people involved in that fight. But think of that, not one piece of military equipment was lost, not one service member was, more importantly, killed. The United States military is the strongest and most fearsome military on the planet by far, with capabilities and skills our enemies can scarcely begin to imagine. We have the best equipment anywhere in the world. There's no
Agree.
equipment like what we have, and you see that.
Agree.
Even if you just look at the boats, you know, we've knocked out 97% of the drugs coming in by sea. 90%. Each boat kills on average, 25,000 people. We knocked out 97%. And those drugs mostly come from a place called Venezuela. We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in, and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years. So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And it has to be judicious because that's what we're all about.
The
We want
U.S. is
peace,
gonna run
liberty,
Venezuela,
and
bro.
justice
What?
For the great people of Venezuela, and that includes many from Venezuela that are now living in the United States and want to go back to their country. It's their homeland. We can't take a chance that somebody else takes over Venezuela that doesn't have the good of the Venezuelan people in mind. We've had decades of that. We're not going to let that happen. We're there now, and what people don't understand, but they understand as I say this, we're there now, but we're going to stay until such time as the proper transition can take place. So we're going to stay until such time as we're going to run it, essentially, until such time as a proper transition can take place. As everyone knows, the oil business in Venezuela has been a bust, a total bust, for a long period of time. They were pumping almost nothing by comparison to what they could have been pumping and what could have taken place. We're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for the country. And we are ready to stage a second and much larger attack if we need to do so. So we were prepared to do a second wave if we needed to do so. We actually assumed that a second wave would be necessary, but now it's probably not. The first wave, if you'd like to call it that, the first attack was so successful, we probably don't have to do a second, but we're prepared to do a second wave, a much bigger wave, actually. This was pinpoint, but we have a much bigger wave that probably won't have to do. This partnership of Venezuela with the United States of America, a country that everybody wants to be involved with because of what we were able to do and accomplish, will make the people of Venezuela rich, independent, and safe. And it will also make the many, many people from Venezuela that are living in the United States extremely happy. They suffered. They suffered. So much was taken from them. They're not going to suffer anymore. The illegitimate dictator Maduro was the kingpin of a vast criminal network responsible for trafficking colossal amounts of deadly and illicit drugs into the United States. As alleged in the indictment, he personally oversaw the vicious cartel known as Cartel de las Solas, which flooded our nation with lethal poison, responsible for the deaths of countless Americans, the many, many Americans. Hundreds of thousands over the years of Americans died because of him. Maduro and his wife will soon face the full might of American justice and stand trial on American soil. Right now, they're on a ship they'll be heading to, ultimately, New York. And then a decision will be made, I assume, between New York and Miami or Florida. But we have people where the overwhelming evidence of their crimes will be presented in a court of law. And I've seen it. I've seen what we have. It's both horrible and breathtaking that something like this could have been allowed to take place. For many years after his term as president of Venezuela expired, Maduro remained in power and waged a ceaseless campaign of violence, terror, and subversion against the United States of America, threatening not only our people, but the stability of the entire region. And you all saw it. In addition to trafficking gigantic amounts of illegal drugs that inflicted untold suffering and human destruction all over the country, all over, in particular, the United States, Maduro sent savage and murderous gangs, including the bloodthirsty prison gang, Tren de Aragua.
Yep. The Tren de Aragua people, they came in through the border when it was open. And they were in Colorado just taking over houses and apartments with AKs. Like, we cannot allow that in the U.S., guys.
But they're not so brutal now. And I just have to congratulate our military, Pete and everybody, and our National Guard, because the job that they've done, whether it's in Washington, D.C., where we have a totally safe city, where it was one of the most unsafe cities anywhere in the world, frankly, and now we have no crime in Washington, D.C. We haven't had a killing. We had the terrorist attack a few weeks ago. A little bit of a different kind of a threat, but we haven't had a killing in a long period of time, 6-7 months. We used to have two, on average, two
no,
a
did he
week
just say 6-7?
in Washington, our capital. We don't have that anymore. The restaurants are opening. Everyone's happy. They're going. They're walking their daughters. They're walking their children, their wives. They walk to restaurants. Restaurants are opening all over Washington, D.C. So I want to thank the National Guard. I want to thank our military. And I want to thank law enforcement. Been amazing. And they should do it with more cities. We're doing it, as you know, and we're doing it in Memphis, Tennessee right now, and crime is down. We've just sort of started a few weeks ago, but crime is down now 77%. And the governor of Louisiana called, great person, and he wanted us to help him, as you know, in a certain very nice part of Louisiana. And we have done that. It's a rough, rough section, and we have crime down. I understand it's down to almost nothing already after 2.5 weeks. New Orleans, it's down to almost nothing, and we've only been there for 2.5 weeks. Can't imagine why governors wouldn't want us to help. We also helped, as you know, in Chicago, and crime went down a little bit there. We did a very small help because we had no working ability with the governor. The governor was a disaster, and the mayor was a disaster, but it knocked down crime. But we're pulling out of there. When they need us, we'll know. You'll know. You'll be writing about it. And likewise, Los Angeles, where we saved Los Angeles early on, where the head of the police department made a statement that if the federal government didn't come in, we would have lost Los Angeles. That's long after the fires. That's when they had the riots in Los Angeles. We did a great job. Got no credit for it whatsoever, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. We don't need the credit. But we'll be pulling out when they need us. They'll call, or we'll go back if we have to. We'll go back. But we did a great job in various cities. But the place that we're very proud of is Washington, D.C., because it's our nation's capital. We took it from being a crime-ridden mess to being one of the safest cities in the country. But the gangs that they sent raped, tortured, and murdered American women and children. They were in all of the cities I mentioned, Tren de Aragua. And they were sent by Maduro to terrorize our people, and now Maduro will never again be able to threaten an American citizen or anybody from Venezuela. There will no longer be threats. For years, I've highlighted the stories of those innocent Americans whose lives were so heartlessly robbed by this Venezuelan terrorist organization. Really one of the worst. One of the worst. They say the worst. Americans like 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungary from Houston. Beautiful Jocelyn Nungary. What happened to her? They, as you know, they kidnapped, assaulted, and murdered by Tren de Aragua animals. They murdered Jocelyn and left her dead under the bridge. There was a bridge that will never be the same to so many people after seeing what happened. As I've said many times, the Maduro regime emptied out their prisons, sent their worst and most violent monsters into the United States to steal American lives.
Yep.
And, they came
Open
from
borders, guys. Open borders do not work.
institutions and insane asylums. They came from prisons and jails. The reason I say both, they sound similar. Actually, prisons a little bit more hostile, a little bit tougher. A mental institution isn't as tough as an insane asylum, but we got them both. They sent from their mental institutions. They sent from their jails, prisons. They were drug dealers. They were drug kingpins. They sent everybody bad into the United States, but no longer. And we have now a border where nobody gets through. In addition, Venezuela unilaterally seized and stole American oil, American assets, and American platforms, costing us billions and billions of dollars. They did this a while ago, but we never had a president that did anything about it. They took all of our property. It was our property. We built it. And we never had a president that decided to do anything about it. Instead, they fought wars that were 10,000 miles away. We built Venezuela oil industry with American talent, drive, and skill, and the socialist regime stole it from us during those previous administrations, and they stole it through force. This constituted one of the largest thefts of American property in the history of our country. Considered the largest theft of property in the history of our country. Massive oil infrastructure was taken like we were babies, and we didn't do anything about it. I would have done something about it. America will never allow foreign powers to rob our people or drive us back into and out of our own hemisphere. That's what they did. Furthermore, under the now deposed dictator Maduro, Venezuela was increasingly hosting foreign adversaries in our region and acquiring menacing offensive weapons that could threaten U.S. interests and lives. And they used those weapons last night. Potentially in league with the cartels operating along our border. All of these actions were in gross violation of the core principles of American foreign policy, dating back more than 2 centuries, and not anymore. All the way back, it dated to the Monroe Doctrines, and the Monroe Doctrine is a big deal, but we've superseded it by a lot, by a real lot. They now call it the Monroe Document. I don't know. It's Monroe Doctrine. We sort of forgot about it. It was very important, but we forgot about it. We don't forget about it anymore. Under our new national security strategy, American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again. Won't happen. So just in concluding, for decades, other administrations have neglected or even contributed to these growing security threats in the Western Hemisphere. Under the Trump administration, we are reasserting American power in a very powerful way in our home region. And our home region is very different than it was just a short while ago. The future will be, and we did this in my first term. We had great dominance in my first term, and we have far greater dominance right now. Everyone's coming back to us. The future will be determined by the ability to protect commerce and territory and resources that are core to national security. These are core to our national security. Just like tariffs are, they've made our country rich, and they've made our national security strong, stronger than ever before. But these are the iron laws that have always determined global power. And we're going to keep it that way. We will secure our borders. We will stop the terrorists. We will crash the cartels, and we will defend our citizens against all threats, foreign and domestic. Other presidents may have lacked the courage or whatever to defend America, but I will never allow terrorists and criminals to operate with impunity against the United States. This extremely successful operation should serve as warning to anyone who would threaten American sovereignty or endanger American lives. Very importantly, the embargo on all Venezuelan oil remains in full effect. The American Armada remains poised in position, and the United States retains all military options until United States demands have been fully met and fully satisfied. All political and military figures in Venezuela should understand what happened to Maduro can happen to them, and it will happen to them if they aren't just fair, even to their people. The dictator and terrorist, Maduro, is finally gone, and Venezuela people are free. They're free again.
Free
It's been a
Venezuela,
long time
baby.
for them, but they're free.
Free Venezuela, free Cuba, free Nicaragua.
This morning, it's a prouder nation this morning because it didn't allow this horrible person and this country that was doing very bad things to us. It didn't allow it to happen. And the Western Hemisphere is right now a much safer place to be. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank General Raisin Kane. He's a fantastic man. I've worked with a lot of generals. I worked with some I didn't like. I worked with some I didn't respect. I worked with some that just weren't good. But this guy is fantastic. I watched last night one of the most precise attacks on sovereignty. I mean, it was an attack for justice. And I'm very proud of him, and I'm very proud of our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, who I'm going to ask to say a few words. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, can you explain how
Free Venezuela, baby.
Venezuela?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Finally, a commander-in-chief the world respects and the American people deserve. And as the President said, words can barely capture the bravery and the power and the precision of this historic operation. A massive joint military and law enforcement raid flawlessly executed by the greatest Americans our country has to offer. American warriors are second to none, the best in the world and the best of our country. What all of us witnessed last night was sheer guts and grit, gallantry, and glory of the American warrior. I'm simply humbled by such men, and I tip my hat to our chairman, Dan Raisin Kane, and all those Americans who stood watch last night. Our warriors are the elite of America, and again, President Trump has your back. No other country on planet Earth, and it's not even close, could pull this kind of operation off. And no other president has ever shown this kind of leadership, courage, and resolve, the most powerful combination the world has ever seen. As the President said, our adversaries remain on notice. America can project our will anywhere, anytime. The coordination, the stealth, the lethality, the precision, the very long arm of American justice, all on full display in the middle of the night. Nicolas Maduro had his chance, just like Iran had their chance, until they didn't and until he didn't. He effed around, and he found out. President Trump is deadly serious about stopping the flow of gangs and violence to our country. Deadly serious about stopping the flow of drugs and poison to our people. Deadly serious about getting back the oil that was stolen from us. And deadly serious about reestablishing American deterrence and dominance in the Western Hemisphere. This is about the safety, security, freedom, and prosperity of the American people. This is America first. This is peace through strength. And the United States War Department is proud to help deliver it. Welcome to 2026. And under President Trump, America is back. I'd like to welcome now our Chairman Raisin Kane, to give a few more details about the operation. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning. Last night, on the order of the President of the United States, and in support of a request from the Department of Justice, as the President said, the United States military conducted an apprehension mission in Caracas, Venezuela, to bring to justice two indicted persons, Nicolas and Cecilia Maduro. This operation, known as Operation Absolute Resolve, was discreet, precise, and conducted during the darkest hours of January 2nd, and was the culmination of months of planning and rehearsal, an operation that, frankly, only the United States military could undertake. What I'd like to do this morning is talk to you through some of the preparation and the details without compromising any of our tactics, techniques, and procedures. There is always a chance that we'll be tasked to do this type of mission again. Our interagency work began months ago and built on decades of experience of integrating complex air, ground, space, and maritime operations. While the past 2 decades have honed the skills of our special operations forces, this particular mission required every component of our joint force, with soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians working in unison with our intelligence agency partners and law enforcement teammates in an unprecedented operation.
Guys, those operators, the special operations soldiers, all those people they're the real heroes of this country. They're the most patriotic people. They're willing to risk their lives just so we can be free and we can do YouTube videos and we can build Legos and we can play video games. Those are the real heroes. Those are the ones busting their butt just so we can have the freedom, just so we can go on this site and just express our opinions. They are the real heroes, guys. Do not forget about that.
Many missions over these last many years. This was an audacious operation that only the United States could do. It required the utmost of precision and integration within our joint force. And the word integration does not explain the sheer complexity of such a mission. An extraction so precise, it involved more than 150 aircraft launching across the Western Hemisphere in close coordination, all coming together in time and place to layer effects for a single purpose: to get an interdiction force into downtown Caracas while maintaining the element of tactical surprise. Failure of one component of this well-oiled machine would have endangered the entire mission, and failure is never an option for America's joint force. Those in the air over Caracas last night were willing to give their lives for those on the ground and in the helicopters. Let me talk a little bit about the preparation. After months of work by our intelligence teammates to find Maduro and understand how he moved, where he lived, where he traveled, what he ate, what he wore, what were his pets. In early December, our force was set pending a series of aligned events. Key was choosing the right day to minimize the potential for civilian harm and maximize the element of surprise and minimize the harm to the indicted personnel, so as the president said, they could be brought to justice. And as the president said earlier today, weather in Venezuela is always a factor this time of the year. And over the weeks through Christmas and New Year's, the men and women of the United States military sat ready, patiently waiting for the right triggers to be met and the president to order us into action. Last night, the weather broke just enough, clearing a path that only the most skilled aviators in the world could maneuver through. Ocean, mountain, low cloud ceilings. But when tasked with a mission, this organization does not quit. At 10:46 p.m. Eastern Time last night, the president ordered the United States military to move forward with this mission. He said to us, and we appreciate it, Mr. President, good luck and Godspeed. And those words were transmitted to the entire joint force. Over the course of the night, aircraft began launching from 20 different bases on land and sea across the Western Hemisphere. In total, more than 150 aircraft, bombers, fighters, intelligence, reconnaissance, surveillance, rotary wing were in the air last night. Thousands and thousands of hours of experience were airborne. Our youngest crew member was 20, and our oldest crew member was 49. And there's simply no match for American military might. As the night began, the helicopters took off with the extraction force, which included law enforcement officers.
A 20-year-old was involved in that operation, guys. Okay?
As they approached
Take that into
Venezuelan
account as well.
shores, the United States began layering different effects provided
How
by
blessed
Space-Tom,
and
Cybercom,
how
and other members
fortunate
of the
we are
interagency
to be
create a
doing what
pathway.
we're doing here in
Overhead,
YouTube.
those forces were
Those
protected
are the
from
real
aircraft,
heroes. A
were protected by
20-year-old
aircraft
guys
from the
out
United
straight out of
States
high school
Marines, the
is
United
risking
States
his
Navy,
life
the United States Air
for
Force,
our
and the
freedoms,
International
for
The force included F-22s,
for everything that we have in this
F-35s,
country, guys.
F-18s, EA-18s, E-2s, B-1 bombers, and other support aircraft, as well as numerous remotely piloted drones. As the force began to approach Caracas, the Joint Air Component began dismantling and disabling the air defense systems in Venezuela, employing weapons to ensure the safe passage of the helicopters into the target area. The goal of our air component is, was, and always will be to protect the helicopters and the ground force and get them to the target and get them home. As the force crossed the last point of high terrain where they'd been hiding in the clutter, we assessed that we had maintained totally the element of surprise. As the helicopter force ingressed towards the objective at low level, we arrived at Maduro's compound at 1:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 2:01 a.m. Caracas local time, and the apprehension force descended into Maduro's compound and moved with speed, precision, and discipline towards their objective and isolated the area to ensure the safety and security of the ground force while apprehending the indicted persons. On arrival into the target area, the helicopters came under fire, and they replied with that fire with overwhelming force in self-defense. One of our aircraft was hit but remained flyable, and as the president said earlier today, all of our aircraft came home, and that aircraft remained flyable during the rest of the mission. As the operation unfolded at the compound, our air and ground intelligence teams provided real-time updates to the ground force, ensuring those forces could safely navigate the complex environment without unnecessary risk. The force remained protected by overhead tactical aviation. Maduro and his wife, both indicted, gave up and were taken into custody by the Department of Justice, assisted by our incredible U.S. military with professionalism and precision, with no loss of U.S. life. After securing the indicted persons, the force began to prep for departure. Helicopters were called in to exfiltrate the extraction force, while fighter aircraft and remotely piloted aircraft provided overhead coverage and suppressive fire. There were multiple self-defense engagements as the force began to withdraw out of Venezuela. The force successfully exfiltrated and returned to their afloat launch bases, and the force was over the water at 3:29 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with indicted persons on board. And both Maduro and his wife were embarked aboard the USS Iwo Jima. In closing, what we've witnessed today is a powerful demonstration of America's joint force. We think, we develop, we train, we rehearse, we debrief, we rehearse again and again, not to get it right, but to ensure that we cannot get it wrong. Our jobs are to integrate combat power so when the order comes, we can deliver overwhelming force at the time and the place of our choosing against any foe anywhere in the world. I am immensely proud today of our joint force and filled with gratitude to represent them here today. There is simply no mission too difficult for these incredible professionals and the families that stand by them and support them. As we stand here this morning, our forces remain in the region at a high state of readiness, prepared to project power, defend themselves, and our interests in the region. This operation is a testament to the dedication and unwavering commitment to justice and our resolve to hold accountable those who threaten peace and stability. In closing, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to the brave men and women who executed this mission. Their courage and tireless commitment to our nation are what makes us strong. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you, Mr. President.
Well, I don't have much to add to what you've heard now, other than the following points. Nicolas Maduro was indicted in 2020 in the United States. He is not the legitimate president of Venezuela. That's not just us saying it. The first Trump administration, the Biden administration, the second Trump administration, none of those three recognized him. He's not recognized by the European Union and multiple countries around the world. He is a fugitive of American justice with a $50 million reward, which I guess we saved $50 million. And
we should make sure.
Yeah, exactly. But
don't let anybody claim it. Nobody deserves it but us.
But I want to be clear about one thing. Nicolas Maduro had multiple opportunities to avoid this. He was provided multiple very, very, very generous offers and chose instead to act like a wild man, chose instead to play around. And the result is what we saw tonight. The other message here is the following. You have a guy, like many people around the world, they like to play games. You have a guy who decides he's going to invite Iran into his country, is going to, do the confiscation of American oil companies, is going to flood our country with gang members, is going to take Americans prisoner and try to hold them for hostage and trade them like he was able to do with the Biden administration. Basically likes to play games all this time and thinks nothing's going to happen. And I hope what people now understand is that we have a president. The 47th president of the United States is not a game player. When he tells you that he's going to do something, when he tells you he's going to address a problem, he means it. He actions it. I can tell you, I've watched this process now for 14, 15 years, been around it. Everybody talks. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. When I get there, we're going to do this. We're going to take. This is a president of action. Like, I don't understand yet how they haven't figured this out. And now, if you don't know,
same thing that I was saying, guys. Same thing that I was saying. Trump is the president of action.
To understand that this is not a president that just talks and does letters and press conferences, and if he says he's serious about something, he means it. And this is something that was a direct threat to the national interest of the United States, and the president addressed it. There's a president of peace, by the way. I told you what I just said earlier. This guy had multiple opportunities to find his way somewhere else and figure out another. He could have been living somewhere else right now, very happy, but instead he wanted to play big boy. And so now, he's got other sets of problems on his hands. And but I think the message here should be for the world. Look, the president doesn't go out looking for people to pick fights with. He's not generally wants to get along with everybody. We'll talk and meet with anybody, but don't play games. Don't play games with this president's in office, because it's not going to turn out well. And so I hope that I guess that lesson was learned last night, and we hope it'll be instructive moving forward.
Is that a message for Cuba? Mr. President.
Mr. President. Mr. President.
Mr. President. Mr. President. Mr. President.
You said that the U.S. is going to run Venezuela. So who's in power right now?
Well, we're going to be running it with a group, and we're going to make sure it's run properly. We're going to rebuild the oil infrastructure, which will cost billions of dollars. It'll be paid for by the oil companies directly. They will be reimbursed for what they're doing, but it's going to be paid. And we're going to get the oil flowing the way it should be. As you know, it was just a minor flow. It was actually a minor flow for what they have. But we're going to run it properly, and we're going to make sure the people of Venezuela are taken care of. We're going to make sure the people that were forced out of Venezuela by this thug are also taken care of.
Mr. President. Mr. President. Mr. President. Mr. President.
President, does the U.S. running the country mean that U.S. troops will be on the ground? How will that work?
Well, they always say boots on the ground. So we're not afraid of boots on the ground if we have to have. We had boots on the ground last night at a very high level, actually. We're not afraid of it. We don't mind saying it, but we're going to make sure that that country is run properly. We're not doing this in vain. This is a very dangerous attack. This is an attack that could have gone very, very badly. Could have gone very badly. We could have lost a lot of people last night. We could have lost a lot of dignity. We could have lost a lot of equipment. The equipment is less important, but we could have lost a lot. And we're going to make sure that this is proper. We're there now. We're ready to go again if we have to. We're going to run the country right. It's going to be run very judiciously, very fairly. It's going to make a lot of money. We're going to give money to the people. We're going to reimburse people that were taken advantage of. We're going to take care of everybody. It's very important. We couldn't let them get away with it. They stole our oil. We built that whole industry there. And they just took it over like we were nothing. And we had a president that decided not to do anything about it. So we did something about it. We're late, but we did something about it. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, can you explain
the exact mechanism by which you're going to run the country? Are you going to designate a U.S. official to coordinate?
It's all being done right now. We're designating people. We're talking to people. We're designating various people, and we're going to let you know who those people are.
What's the group you mentioned that would run Venezuela?
Well, it's largely going to be, for a period of time, the people that are standing right behind me. We're going to be running it. We're going to be bringing it back. It's a dead, I talk about a dead country. A year and a half ago, we were a dead country. Now we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. We're a country doing better than any country anywhere in the world. And it required leadership. Venezuela has a lot of bad people in there, a lot of bad people that shouldn't be leading. We're not going to take a chance that one of those people take over for Maduro. So you can look at, and others, we have fantastic people, including people in the military. So we're going to have a group of people running it until such time as it can be put back on track, make a lot of money for the people, and give people a great way of life, and also reimbursement for people in our country that were forced out of Venezuela.
Rubio would be...
You said earlier today that you weren't going to back Machado to come back and be the opposition leader in your Fox and Friends interview. And then you also mentioned the vice president of Venezuela. Are you going to work with the vice president of Venezuela, or how do you foresee the relationship going?
I understand she was just sworn in, but she was, as you know, picked by Maduro. So Marco's working on that directly. He just had a conversation with her, and she's essentially willing to do what we think is necessary to make Venezuela great again. Very simple.
Mr. President, Colombian President Gustavo Petro, a couple weeks ago, you said he's got to watch his ass. And today he said he's not concerned about anything happening to him in the aftermath of this operation. So just what your message is about that.
He has cocaine mills. He has factories where he makes cocaine. And, yeah, I think I stick by my first statement. He's making cocaine. They're sending it into the United States. So he does have to watch his ass.
Mr. President, did you notify any members of Congress in advance?
Marco, do you want to talk about that? Because you were involved.
Sure. We called members of Congress immediately after. This was not the kind of mission that you can do congressional notification on. It was a trigger-based mission in which conditions had to be met night after night. We watched and monitored that for a number of days. So it's just simply not the kind of mission you can call people and say, hey, we may do this at some point in the next 15 days. But it's largely a law enforcement function. Remember, at the end of the day, at its core, this was an arrest of 2 indicted fugitives of American justice, and the Department of War supported the Department of Justice in that job. Now, there are broader policy implications here, but it's just not the kind of mission that you can pre-notify because it endangers the mission.
I agree. Like, you can't just be like, hey, we're going to capture this guy.
Congress has a tendency to leak. This would not be good. If they leaked, General, I think it would have been maybe a very different result. But I have to say, they knew we were coming at some point, We had a lot of ships out there. They sort of knew we were coming. We weren't there. But Congress will leak, and we don't want leakers.
Mr. President, you were one of the only people to watch this all play out live. What was Maduro doing when the U.S. forces entered what I assume would be his home? And also, was there any point where the U.S. was considering if Maduro pushed back or resisted killing Maduro?
It could have happened. It could have happened. He was trying to get into a safe place. The safe place is all steel. And he wasn't able to make it to the door because our guys were so fast. They went through the opposition so fast. And there was a lot of opposition. People were wondering, do we get them by surprise? Sort of surprised, but they were waiting for something. It was a lot of opposition. There was a lot of gunfire. You saw some of it today. But he was trying to get to a safe place, which wasn't safe because we would have had the door blown up in about 47 seconds, they say on average, regardless of how thick the steel was. It was a very thick door. It was a very heavy door, but he was unable to get to that door. He made it to the door. He was unable to close it.
So where's Maduro going to be?
Go ahead, finish.
Where is Maduro going to be in the time being right now? Do you know his exact whereabouts?
Well, eventually, ultimately, in the near future, he's going to be brought to New York.
And where is he going to be held? Where is he going to be held in New York? Do you know?
That's going to be up to the officials that do these things.
Mr. President, the U.S. has something of a mixed track record of ousting dictators without necessarily a plan for what comes afterwards. Did that weigh on your decision
Well, that's
making?
when we had different presidents, but with me, that's not true. With me, we've had a perfect track record of winning. We win a lot, and we win. If you look at Soleimani, you look at al-Baghdadi, you look at the Midnight Hammer. Midnight Hammer was incredible. Right now, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. We have essentially peace in the Middle East because of that. If we weren't successful with Midnight Hammer, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. So, with me, you've had a lot of victory. You've had only victories. You've had no losses. Yeah.
Mr. President, can you? How long do you expect the U.S. to run Venezuela, and how soon do you want Venezuelan people to hold elections?
So I'd like to do it quickly, but it takes a period of time. You know, we're rebuilding. We have to rebuild their whole infrastructure. The infrastructure is rotted. It's actually very dangerous. It's blow-up territory. Oil is very dangerous. It's a very dangerous thing to take out of the ground. It can kill a lot of people. It has killed a lot of people doing just that. The infrastructure is old. It's rotted. Much of it is stuff that we put there 25 years ago, and we're going to be replacing it. And we're going to take a lot of money out so that we can take care of the country.
Are you saying that Secretary Rubio and
Mr. President, China, Russia, and Iran have interests in Venezuela. How does this operation affect your relationships with them when it comes to the oil and drugs?
In terms of China and Russia, Russia when we get things straightened out. But in terms of other countries that want oil, we're in the oil business. We're going to sell it to them. We're not going to say we're not going to go there. In other words, we'll be selling oil probably in much larger doses because they couldn't produce very much because their infrastructure was so bad. So we'll be selling large amounts of oil to other countries, many of whom are using it now, but I would say many more will come.
Yeah, because so now what we got is China trying to invade Taiwan and basically taking over the processor chips plants, so that's going to be another topic for this year for sure for the administration.
You're going to have some of the riches that you should have had for a long period of time. It was stolen from you. But you're going to have peace and you're going to have safety. You're going to have justice. You're going to have a country. You're going to have a real country. You're going to have potentially a great country. If you go back 20 years, maybe even a little longer ago, that was a great country. And they destroyed it. Remember I said that if we lose this election, the United States will be Venezuela on steroids. That's what would have happened. Had we lost the election, the 2024 election, we suffered so badly. When you look at the border from 2020, what they did, what Joe Biden administration did to our country should never be forgotten. But if we had to go through another year of that, we would be exactly where Venezuela was in terms of, I used to say, if they win, we're going to be Venezuela on steroids, and that's what would have happened.
President, thank you. Are you saying that Secretary Hegseth and Rubio are going to be running Venezuela, and will you be sending in U.S. military troops to provide?
They're going to be a team that's working with the people of Venezuela to make sure that we have Venezuela right. Because for us to just leave, who's going to take over? I mean, there is nobody to take over. You have a vice president who's been appointed by Maduro. And right now she's the vice president, and she's, I guess, the president. She was sworn in as president just a little while ago. She had a long conversation with Marco, and she said, we'll do whatever you need. I think she was quite gracious, but she really doesn't have a choice. We're going to.
She doesn't want.
We're not going to just do this with Maduro.
She doesn't want the smoke. I don't want the smoke. Let it go hey, listen. I was just here for the money, man.
It has zero chance of ever coming back. We'll run it properly. We'll run it professionally. We'll have the greatest oil companies in the world go in and invest billions and billions of dollars and take out money, use that money in Venezuela. And the biggest beneficiary are going to be the people of Venezuela. And also, I can't stress this strongly enough, the people that got thrown out of Venezuela that are now in the United States, and frankly, some want to stay, and some probably want to go back. Yeah.
So, Mr. President, what is being done to protect Americans in the country, and were any of the detained Americans?
Well, right now they're very
last
protected
night?
Because nobody's going to mess with us. They're very protected. The people of, and we let them know that you better not touch one of them.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. All right, guys. So he's just gonna be answering some questions. It's great. It's great. We finally took Maduro out. Like I said, hopefully Cuba is next. I think Cuban people deserve freedom. It's long awaited, and 2026 is starting off to be an amazing year so far, guys. But yeah, remember, guys, Jesus Christ came here to die for your sins. Don't put your faith in humans. Put your faith in Him. He is God. He came here. He died for our sins. Jesus loves you. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know your opinions on this in the comment section. And if any news comes up, I guess we'll react to it. And thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, freedom, games, and Jesus. Thank you guys for watching.